I mean, it was funny working at IGN, in the IGN LA office, actually, because when Per Schneider worked in that office, along with former editor Travis Fickett, they were giant fans of the book who were obsessively tracking this series. I hadn't read the book. And I'll say the thing about this series that's so impressive is, as someone who's not really into traditional fantasy, into it was a time of fantasy, this just grabs you. You know, you are so invested in the characters and everything going on that you don't have to be a fantasy person, I think, to be involved in this.
Well, yeah, I made this argument before, but I don't think that Game of Thrones, there's fantasy elements, but I don't think that it's a fantasy show. You know, it's a character drama that just so happens to have dragons.
Right.
You know what I mean? So,
I mean, if you look at the first season especially, too, because even though that opening scene does introduce the concept of the White Walkers, then it's kind of dropped, and until the dragons show up at the end, it's just people in sort of the Middle Ages. Not the Middle Ages, but you get the idea.
Way back in Game of Thrones time.
Yeah, in Game of Thrones time.
Yeah, this is another thing where the undertaking of casting, you know, this giant, you know, operatic series of characters that you have to sort of go and like, man, I hope this pans out in 10 years when we're finishing up this series. And it's one of those things, you watch the show and you're like, oh, everyone is fantastic.
Yeah. And there was a couple of sort of fan castings. Sean Bean and Peter Dinklage, I know, were two people, a lot of people who love the books were like, they should get him. And they did. And they were perfect, you know? And then, everyone else, it just really, everything fit in.
And having showrunners like Benioff and D.B. Weiss, like that's, it seems like such a monumental task to undertake is to sort of take this giant sprawling book series and be like, well, we're going to try to do something which really hasn't been done before and do adult fantasy on a high budget level on TV. Like we had some fantasy, but nothing on TV ever clicked as much as this.
Well, the payoff was monumental, right? Like I can't think of a show that had this sort of cultural zeitgeist around it like Game of Thrones. Like there was a period after the end of the first season where you could not go anywhere and not talk about it. Like I remember having to put a moratorium on it among some of my friends. It's like, we cannot talk about the show any longer. We've talked about it to death. Like, yes, it's phenomenal. And still, I mean, that still happens, but there was a while there where everyone was talking about it. Everyone was watching. I mean, still, when it premieres, that Monday morning, it's this weird thing where like, oh, if you didn't watch it in the first 12 hours it's out, you're probably gonna get spoiled in this office, which is terrifying.
And I want to commend them also. You're saying Benioff and Weiss, what they were taking on. They also were taking books that were so specific with the point of views, the way the chapters are done. So they were really opening it up. And as the years have gone on, of course, there's been some controversial decisions. But by and large, I thought it was really impressive, especially looking at that first season, how it's like, hey, what was going on with Cersei and Robert? Since we never would follow them down the hall, since they weren't point of view characters. What was going on with Littlefinger? And a lot of really good scenes were invented for the show, which often is not the case. But here I think they did a great job of taking those characters and really expanding them.
I mean, that's the best adaptations are willing to bend. Like, that's the whole thing. Like the Kubrick Shining, like the reason that is so phenomenal is because it's willing to deviate from Stephen King's book. And I know Stephen King's not a huge fan of the movie, but like that's a much better movie than the TV miniseries was, or whatever that was. Honestly, Game of Thrones by the end, as someone who didn't, you know, I haven't read the book. I tried reading the first books a couple times, and just it is sort of impenetrable. Like you, I'm not a giant fantasy fan.
I have read the books and love them now.
Have you?
Before the show debuted, I was like, okay, I got to do my research. And
you read all the books before the show debuted?
Yeah.
Whew. It's a Herculean task.
You're much better at your job than we are.
I have since read them all, but I've done them like as the next season is premiering, I'll read the book first.
Yeah, but just by the end of the spoilers, by the end of the first season, when Sean Bean gets decapitated, you're like, oh, this can happen.
Oh yeah.
Like this. Oh, this is no one's safe on this show.
So
Did I just spoil that for you?
Well, I mean, I knew about that by now, but like as someone who hasn't really, I've only seen the first couple episodes, right? It's been really fun watching fan reactions. Like people actually record themselves reacting to episodes, like Red Wedding, was it? Right?
Oh yeah. I mean, honestly, any of those, like we have a ton of giant fans of the books in the office, and like that's sort of like, oh
communal
man, this week's coming together. I'm
like,
what's gonna happen?
That was this macabre anticipation, right? Because the books didn't play by the rules. They didn't play fair, and who was supposed to be the hero was killed. And there was so many times where you think, oh, I know where it's going, and then it didn't. So then it became this kind of fun, dark game that all of us had read the books would play, where we're like, okay, I didn't film people, but I was still watching people.
Yeah, you're like, oh, this is gonna. Oh no, totally.
Yeah,
when I rewatched it, or when I watched it with people, like when the Red Wedding's coming up, I'm like, oh man, I'm really happy I could see you cry right now.
Yeah.
That was really sad.
Sadistic.
Yeah, that's why she left. Yeah, Game of Thrones, obviously. And the other sort of big thing to talk about is the fact that we're getting to the point where they're lapping the books. Like, they're making the show quicker than George R. R. Martin, George R. R. Martin.
They've caught up now, and so yes, it's going to be very interesting because even though we know that they've sort of sat down with him and they've been told the ending, they're like the two people who know the ending.
Yeah.
But I just feel we're going to have to take a very different road to get there.
Yeah.
First of all, it will spoil the books, I think, because I think the major deaths and stuff will be the same. But also, I think when it's all said and done, I think the latter, maybe the last third of these stories will take very different routes to get there.
Which I think is super exciting.
Yeah, me too.
Like, you're going to see, and I have full faith in them. I mean, everyone should have full faith in them after these 5 seasons.
Yeah.
They just absolutely crushed it.
I think that the dichotomy between the books and the TV series is one of the parts that I like the most about Game of Thrones. I like the little changes. Like, I do think that the TV series has made changes for the better, but the stuff that they leave out of the books, I don't think is bad. I think it serves in a different purpose. And, like, I don't know. I like to think of them as two completely separate entities.
Yeah.
Telling us, like, the same story, obviously, but in two different ways. I don't know.
I totally agree with you. There's always going to be people who think like they want the page-for-page adaptation.
It has to be this way, yeah.
And it's just not realistic. I mean, people every year we see people on our site, other sites go, why don't they make more than 10? And they're like, we can't.
Yeah.
This is, do you know what we're doing here?
Yeah.
And we're filming in multiple countries.
Yeah.
They have to write all the scripts ahead of time. It's an insane show to pull off. They can't do more. They can't include every character, but what they're doing is amazing.
I mean, also the production levels are the levels of a Hollywood blockbuster.
Yeah.
Like, you look at in the last season, that giant battle, and you're like, this is better than anything I've seen in theaters this year. Like, how is this possible? How is this on my TV? It's not TV. It's HBO.
But it's on your TV.
Yeah, Game of Thrones, that's probably still the biggest pop culture thing in our office. Bigger than any game, bigger than any movie. Like, that's the thing that everyone is waiting for.
What about the Game of Thrones game?
Dude, see, and then we got, we got the expanded, like, Telltale made this really cool Game of Thrones game, and it really took what was, a sort of a niche genre series and brought it to mainstream, and everyone likes it. And like you said, it's because it's fantasy, but it's a character drama. It's like, it's the West Wing.
It fit in on HBO so well because HBO was the home of The Wire and Deadwood and shows that were great at sort of world building and taking a world that might not be a world you want to be in, but you are just fascinated by how it all works.
Right.
It's also insane that it's arguably the best thing HBO has ever done because, like, there are 10 things that are arguably the best thing HBO has ever done. It's probably the best network of all time. I guess it's not a network.
Yeah, I think that's subjective, right?
Yeah.
Like, super subjective. You might like a crime drama more so than you would like fantasy just inherently.
You an Ozman?
There's what's that?
You an Ozman?
I was thinking more about The Sopranos.
Yes, The Sopranos.
And I'm a
That's
Wire
the best
guy,
thing
but-
it is.
Yeah, but I mean, ultimately, like, there's no, like Eric said, there's no denying like the production value and the level of quality in each of those episodes is just.
Yeah, and there's a cool wolf.
There's a bunch of cool wolves.
Yeah. A couple of them died. R.I.P.
Sorry, Chloe.
Spoilers.
Spoilers. The wolves died.
You don't know which.